yesterday, Jimmy. It's just a solid sheet of ice. And so we've been over here working, my regular job, and then the show. And Michael Jordan, one of the guys, came by just now to pick up some stuff and run back to Memphis. He said it was a solid 7 miles of ice. He goes, I don't know what that was doing coming over on that route, but he said we're supposed to get some big ass snowstorm here Monday. I haven't even been watching the news, and they're talking. I didn't even realize it, and it's going to be like below zero. We're out here on the Arctic. I feel like I'm on the frozen tundra. This is unbelievable. God. Okay. Oh, look, we are about 20 seconds away from starting. Okay.
All right.
And Rodney, thank you for joining us, and you too, Jimmy. Hold on one sec. How many seconds, Audrey? Okay, we got about a minute. Okay, but it's man, we're all the firewood I've been cutting up firewood, but man, it's going to be. I didn't realize how big a storm it was. This is crazy. Yeah, we're ready. Okay.
Yeah, they had 5 or 6 people. Go ahead.
I was like 10 seconds. Okay, we'll talk about it as soon as we get on the air because it is interesting. Hold on. What's the cue on me? Okay, Rob Brown here on the Friday afternoon podcast, www.sidelines.live, broadcasting from the frozen tundra of Parkin, Arkansas, the Cherry Farm. Got the fire going, and I'll tell you what, Jimmy Hodge is on with us right now, our national college football, basketball, baseball contributor, recruiting and all, up in Knoxville, and another one of our guests, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. And guys, tell you what, I've been over here, working remote like most of the civilized world, or whatever we're called, has been doing for almost a year. Hadn't been watching the news, just been watching really the Beverly Hillbillies on YouTube channel and working. And all of a sudden I hear I know we got a good bit of ice, freezing rain over here Wednesday night and yesterday. And the Highway 75 over here is just a solid sheet of ice. And Michael Jordan, MJ, one of our club members, not the Michael Jordan, came in just now to pick up some stuff to go back to Memphis and says, hey, man, big storm coming. And I haven't even really seen it. But, Jimmy, you were saying something about it before we get started, but then we're going to get into the show. But what is the forecast for over here? I'm telling you what, you talk about being isolated. We're that.
Well, I didn't really know about that one, but, it's gotten nationwide publicity over the last better part of 2 days now. The horrific accident in Fort Worth, where there were 80 vehicles involved and at least 5 or 6 people killed. And, in the morning, especially before the sun comes up, that type of thing overnight, it can obviously freeze those roads, and they have that black ice, which is basically invisible. And, it can just fool, a lot of people. And when you're in rush hour traffic, and in Fort Worth's case, probably, there were hundreds of vehicles just within probably half a mile of when the trouble started, and you really got yourself a problem. So it's definitely a situation where you need to just use all caution, because that ice is the really most dangerous aspect of the whole equation there when it comes to snow, sleet, and ice.
Yeah, it is. And we drove over to Wynn, Arkansas last night, went to JB's Steakhouse, and normally go over to Hot Stone for trivia Thursday nights. And it was closed, but the roads, Highway 64 was okay, but Highway 75 between I-40 and 64, which is 11 miles, is, like I say, you go above 26 miles an hour, you're going to be in the ditch. But hey, guys, we've got a great show lined up. Like I say, they're all great, or we don't do them. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, is with us. And Billy Roberts is going to join us around 3:30 from Atlanta, talking SEC and Atlanta sports. Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU Tiger, at 4, and Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, at 4:30. Lots of talk in between. Rodney, hey, when I talked to you off the air earlier today, you were working on a story about Alabama, the football staff. You had another coach leave for the NFL. I'm sure there are 500 that are lined up wanting to be on Nick Saban's staff. What's the latest news?
Well, it looks like they're going to hire Jay Valai. His last name's Valai. He's kind of bounced around here in the last month. He was at the University of Texas this past season where he coached cornerbacks. Okay.
All right.
So he took a job. He took a job at the University of Houston about 2 weeks ago, and then was hired yesterday with the Philadelphia Eagles. So it looks like today he may be headed to Tuscaloosa instead. So he's got a great reputation, tremendous recruiter, supposedly in the state of Texas. And that's what we thought. We figured that they would try to get a replacement for Carl Scott, the cornerbacks coach, with someone who could really recruit that state of Texas. And because you guys know that Alabama had tremendous success in the state of Texas this year. It's going to be more difficult, obviously, with Sark there now. Of course, Jimbo's already established. But Jay Valai is the name to kind of watch out for. I'm being told that if indeed everything goes as expected, that he'll be the next guy. And again, it's not official yet, but it certainly looks like it's headed in that direction.
Well, turnover is a part of it. Nick Saban in the last 14 years, 13 of those times, he's had at least one of his coaches leave to take a head coaching job. This year, no different with Steve Sarkisian taking the Texas job. Bill O'Brien's on that staff, who was the guy that tried to fix Penn State, and he did. He kept them from completely falling apart when Joe Paterno was forced to resign after the Jerry Sandusky nightmare. And you've got several other NFL coaches on this Alabama staff. And to me, when you're recruiting at the level Alabama does, which is number 1 or 2 in the country every year, these kids they all want to go to the NFL, or they're not going to come to Alabama or any of these big time schools. But having coaches who have NFL experience does nothing but help, because they know exactly what is needed from players if they are to make it to the league. So, I mean, it's just it just gets a better situation. Even though you lose one, this guy sounds like he's going to be a good fit. And Nick Saban look at his track record. He rarely messes up on a hire.
Well, no, he doesn't. You're right. He's been very successful with the hires that he's had. And also, I think, too, with his program the way it is, I think it's set up for a lot of these guys to be successful. First of all, that in recruiting, you do what you're supposed to do. The product kind of sells itself to some extent. I mean, obviously, they have to hustle and do an excellent job, build relationships and all of those things. But so he does a good job of picking guys who are capable of doing that. And then, certainly being good position coaches, when you have really, really good players, Jimmy can tell you, makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it, Jimmy?
There's no doubt about it. You got to have the horses. It's just a question of, which coaches can mold all these great individual players together into a unit. And Saban has proved over the last decade and a half, there's nobody better than than him, for sure.
Look, when you think about Steve Sarkisian taking that Texas job, he was there to be part of the staff when they won the national championship over Ohio State. And you look back when Lane Kiffin was at the game against Washington in Atlanta, but he wasn't there for the national championship game. Saban didn't want him there. I think he made the right call, he felt. But it makes a difference to have continuity. But Steve Sarkisian was at Alabama. He left. He came back. There's a process there, Rodney, regardless if it's on offense or defense. The coaches know what's expected of them, and they just plug the right people in there. It's like you have a matrix. They either fit or they don't fit. And that's why Alabama is a consistent winner, and this staff recruits at the level that they do. 7 times Nick Saban's had the number 1 ranked recruiting class, and we have the draft coming up in April. But so far in the 13 previous drafts, Nick Saban in Alabama, 97 players drafted, 33 in the first round. Second most is LSU with 89 and 17 in the first round. And the record in the last 11 games, LSU versus Alabama, I believe, is 9-1 or 10-1 in favor of Alabama.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I think, the way they develop players is obviously second to none. I think you keep up with those numbers probably better than anyone, Rob. They've had the number of 5-stars, the percentage of 5-stars that Alabama's had developed into first-round draft picks is right near 50%. And I think the nearest program to Alabama is like less than 20%, like 17%, I think it is. And that's over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. That's a pretty incredible statistic, the development success that they've had. And, we're starting to hear more and more of these prospects talk about that and talk about, they want to be developed for the NFL. It's easy to say, that you're going to do it, but let's see your track record. And you and I have talked about, it's not that Georgia hasn't done a good job or whatever, but look at the number of 5-stars that they've had and how many have become first-team All-Americans. And again, I'm not trying to pick on Georgia, but they're kind of a good candidate. I think Kirby has signed 25 5-stars, and if my numbers are right, 0 of those have turned into consensus first-team All-Americans. He's had some first-round draft picks, but then on the other hand, you look at the success Alabama's had since 2008, Rob, think about this, and Jimmy. Alabama's had 41 consensus first-team All-Americans since 2008, 41. The nearest program to that, my understanding, is Oklahoma has had 16. Think about that.
That is an incredible statistic. Rodney, there are a lot of schools that don't even have 7 or 8 in their entire history going back 125 to 150 years.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's pretty incredible. But, I think that somebody was asking the other day, okay, so what's the difference between some of these schools, or let's just say this, instead of schools, let's say some of the coaching staff, because that's really what it comes down to. And how that they can have some success, major success, LSU, for example, Ed Orgeron, and then they really struggle. They don't ever have that success again, or that level of success, or they don't have it on a consistent basis, and all of that. And it's like Saban every year. I mean, listen. As soon as that Ohio State game was over, when he talks about the 24-hour rule, it was already in effect for him. He was already moving forward to this year and starting back at step one to build this next season, this team, 2021 team. Was already moving forward in that direction, not only in recruiting, but looking at his staff, making those evaluations of potential candidates, and then looking forward about what you have returning, who's going to leave. All of those things. Now, all these coaches have to deal with that. I get that. But they're already in the process of where, they're preparing for the next season. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that Saban doesn't run around on the parade circuit, all January and February.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people last year, when Alabama had the shootout with Ole Miss early in the season, were making jokes of like, well, too many Aflac commercials. That's BS. I mean, that was a case of nobody had spring practice. Defenses were terrible the first 4 games of the season, I thought, and then they picked up. Here's another bit of interesting trivia, and you start looking at these numbers. But from the Super Bowl this past Sunday, Tampa Bay 31, Kansas City 9, there was 1 5-star on the 2 rosters combined. We know who that was. Leonard Fournette out of St. Augustine High School there in New Orleans, played at LSU. But ironically, I think he was basically cut, wasn't he, from the 1-15 Jacksonville team? Nobody wanted to trade for him or anything, and he ends up going over to Tampa Bay, and along with a lot of other players, to follow Tom Brady, and they win the Super Bowl. There were 20 combined 4-stars on the 2 rosters, 22 combined 3-stars on the 2 rosters, and 41 who were 2-stars or others on those rosters. I mean, player development matters. And the fact that Alabama can take so many of those 5-star players and develop them and keep all those guys working together for the team. Jimmy, I mean, that's almost impossible, isn't it?
Well, there's no doubt about it. And the fact that he's had to do it so many times, not to mention having to replace numerous coaches on his staff like he is this past month. I mean, he's got a system to it. He knows how to do it, and he's able to get the right personnel in there. And you talk about being able this year, of course, as usual, Bama's going to have to replace a lot of key players at key positions. But again, just look at Mac Jones. I mean, how many thought this guy would be able to, basically not play for the better part of 4 years and then just come in like he'd been a 3-year starter? I mean, it's just amazing because I think a lot of these players look at it as a long-term situation. When you see players in front of you the caliber of Hurts and Tua, you're not going to play right away. So I think he gets players that, hey, if they get a chance to play early, great, but they're prepared that if things don't go just perfectly, that they're going to have to wait for a while. And when they do get their chance, they're able to, fit in and be significant contributors to a championship team.
Yeah, I mean, Rodney, I don't know the statistic, but what's the number of 4-year starters at Alabama? I mean, Barrett Jones' name comes to mind from Memphis ECS, who was a 4-year starter on the offensive line. But it's really, to me, that's the exception and certainly not the norm.
Yeah, I wanted to check on our.
Wait, but what would you say, Rodney? I mean, is that? Am I right on that?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out somebody else. To go to the NFL for years. There's not very video.
I've had one about.
But yeah,
3 weeks.
well,
We got that.
we're having a little bit of technical problem here, and let's do this. I think that number, I can think of Barrett Jones is about the only one. And you start looking at them. You start looking at them, Rodney, of those two. What Barrett Jones comes to mind. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that have played all 3 or all 4 years that they were at Alabama. Then I'm talking about starting.
Well, you look at, played or started. It depends on how you want to look. I mean, obviously, Devontae Smith was not a starter. He played a fair amount as a true freshman, but again, didn't start that year, but stayed 4 years amazingly, and so did Najee Harris. He played some as a freshman, probably played in just about every game, but not a lot. He stuck around. But like you look at Patrick Surtain, okay, he starts as a true freshman. He's out of here as a junior. Minka Fitzpatrick, same way. You could go on and on and on. Derrick Henry. So many players that started true freshmen, and generally, if they start in this program as a true freshman, there's probably, and I don't know what the percentage is. I imagine it's pretty high, though. I'd have to go back and look at it, Jimmy and Rob. But if you start in this program as a true freshman, I bet the percentage of those guys who did that went after 3 years to the NFL is very, very high. So there's got to be a correlation there.
Yeah, and the odds of, a player, the guys that leave after 3 years, when they are interviewed later, most of them will come back and say, I really should have stayed for that 4th year. But the advice of agents and other people is go while you're hot. And you look at guys that are there for 4 years, and then the 5-year guys, that's the only reason some of them get to the NFL is because they have to be, it took them longer to develop. And again, to me, the toughest thing to do is to get assistant coaches who can help you develop talent. That is very hard to do. Look around the SEC at the different rosters where they have quarterbacks that come in that are 4 stars, in some cases 5 stars. And again, we're not going to throw that term 5-star recruit around loosely because there might be 34, 35 of them in the country. in any given year out of 34 or 3,500 kids that signed Division I scholarships, Rodney. And Mac Jones from the Bowles Academy in Jacksonville, Florida, that's what you get, though, when you have someone like Steve Sarkisian. And I know Matt Dable was there for a while, who had been the tight ends coach for the Patriots, came to Alabama, worked some with Jalen Hurts. And, Jalen Hurts had several different coordinators. And now he started some games his rookie year in the NFL. But if you can't develop players, it's no different than you and I going to the best grocery store in Tuscaloosa or Mountain Brook or Memphis or whatever and spending $1,000 on halibut, aged Angus, and free-range chicken, but we leave it in the back of the car for a week in July. It's not going to end well, except for the flies, the green flies, and the maggots. I mean, you got to develop it, Rodney.
Yeah, you really do. And again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. I think I heard it more this year in the recruiting process than ever, Rob. Just talking to the variety of players, various players, prospects, coaches, high school coaches, and what they have to say about their players, what they're looking for. It was about player development. Who's going to make me into the best player I can be? Who's going to develop me physically? Who's going to develop me as a player? Who's going to develop me off the field as well? Because I think that's extremely important. And, Nick Saban has sold this for a long time. You can be a great player, you can get developed, but character means something too. And again, I think that, the programs, and it's not, I'm speaking for Alabama. Okay. I don't know what they do as much at Auburn or Tennessee or, Notre Dame or whatever. So I'm not saying Alabama's the only school that does these things and offers these programs by any means, but Nick Saban, I know what he does here in terms of bringing in people, guest speakers. You can name several of the high-profile athletes. Even Mike Tyson, I think it was last year, they had Mike Tyson come in and speak to the players and talk about, his experiences, things that he did maybe that he thought as a young athlete, he thought, okay, I can do this. And how he learned from those mistakes, his experiences, all of these things to try to help these kids develop the right mindset.
Yeah.
So I think that's extremely important too. And I think that the full development across the board is something that I've heard more about from prospects over the last couple of years than I had before.
Yeah. And again, you've got coaches, every year you're going to have turnover on your staff. A couple of years with Nick Saban can also set you up for the rest of your life if you play it right. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be a great coach. He's going to certainly, though, equip you with a plan and the process, as he likes to call it, but it works. Now, his record against his former assistants in the SEC is, I believe, 23-0. Let's go back to this situation right now. Next year, you're going to have a new quarterback at Alabama. And we all know the names, but the talent, this offensive line class, for instance, that Alabama brought in is probably the best they've ever brought in. It was number one ranked recruiting class. I don't expect them to put 5 true freshmen out there. That's not going to happen. But whoever the quarterback is, Bryce Young, if it's him, whoever it is, who do you think it's going to be? And again, he'll have a running back around him. I mean, is it going to be Trey Sanders? I mean, who's it going to be? But whoever it is, we don't know for sure. But I can assure you, I guarantee it, they'll be prepared, or they're not going to be out there on the field, because the leverage, and Pat Dye Jr. was on the show with us a couple of weeks ago. He's a sports agent. He works with a lot of the Alabama players. He represents them and loves it. And he said, that's the leverage that Nick Saban has, is that if you're not getting the job done, I can and I will replace you. You'll be sitting over there on the bench or standing on the sidelines, but either put out or you're going to be out.
Yeah. Rob, you're talking about that, certainly, but the competition here is great. And I think that's another thing that I heard a lot in this recruiting process was, a lot of people kind of say, well, why would you go to a certain place when you have all these guys stacked in front of you? And, it's about competition. That's another part of development.
Absolutely.
Is when you have all these players that you go against every day in practice, and that's where you get better. I mean, that's what makes Saturdays. And again, when I say easier, I don't mean easy. There's a difference between easier and easy,
Yeah.
But I think when you're prepared and you're prepared against the best players, like I heard Cam Robinson a few years ago. He was going up against Jonathan Allen every day in practice.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yeah.
You don't think Cam made Jonathan Allen better and Jonathan didn't make Cam better?
Sure.
Amari Cooper going up against whoever it might be.
Marlon Humphrey.
Fitzpatrick. Yeah, right. Minka Fitzpatrick's having to go up against these guys.
Yeah.
So, they're all, when you have that kind of competition in practice every day, that's a huge, huge plus. And like you said, you know what? If you're a competitor and you've got a lot of guys around you with the equal talent that you have, you have to look at it and say, wow, you know what? I can't take a day off. Yeah. I just simply can't take a day off.
Well, yeah, and you get a false sense of security if you're beating up on a bunch of people that aren't any good. When you put your head on the pillow at night, if you've really been tested and if you're really being honest with yourself. And I think, to me, I'm competitive in everything I do. I canoe race, anything I do. We go 45 minutes upstream against the current as part of our training. We do the course 5 times before we do the race. We do a lot of things that I will say this. If you're going to be great at anything, you're not going to see many people out there training at 5 o'clock in the morning and doing the stuff that you're doing. But when you're talking to the people that win and the guys that are our mentors, we call it ironbowlracing.com with Boyd Wade and me. They've won the national championship in the men's aluminum doubles 21 years. And we always like to talk to them. And what they've said is right. You will learn as much from the people that you beat as you will from the people that beat you. Don't be afraid to talk to people that beat you. If you want to be great, you better be hanging around great people, sharp, hardworking, competitive people. And again, I'm with you, Rodney. That's a bunch of crap. All these people saying, well, don't go there. They got players stacked up. If a guy balks at that and hesitates and doesn't go there, you don't want him to begin with. When people join the Marine Corps, they want to be a Ranger, a Navy SEAL. They better not be afraid of competition, because they will chew you up and spit you out. And they'll tell you every day, do us a favor now. Quit now before it really matters. Go ahead, find out now. We'd rather you do it now. Go ring that bell 3 times and go home and take a hot shower and get in bed and get mommy to rub your shoulders, because we're not doing that here. There's certain things that we're looking for. But, you talked about the leadership. Leadership and expectations come from working your ass off. You expect great things. Look, call it a sense of entitlement or whatever you want. But when you have trained hard to be hard and you've done all those little things that other people don't want to do, then when you get up to the starting line in a race, in any kind of competition, when you run out on the football field, you're going to win. You got to conceive it, believe it, and achieve it, Rodney. And that's what I just love to follow recruiting, but read and listen to what the great ones all say. They love the competition. Tom Brady, guy has more money than he can ever spend in his life. Why does he get up every morning and train? Why is he still playing football? He doesn't need the money. It's because he has high expectations of who and what he is. Isn't that right?
Oh, absolutely. Loves what he's doing. He wants to be the best as long as he can, and has a lot of pride in what he does. And I think that's the kind of people you look for. That's all of those things we're talking about. Those are championship qualities that I think you look for in players and in people and all of these things. And I think obviously, not everybody's going to win 7 Super Bowls, but that's we know this for sure. But one of the reasons he's won all those Super Bowls is because he has those qualities.
That's right. He was the 199th player selected in the draft. He backed up Brian Greasy, obviously, Drew Henson at Michigan, and then he got his time, and he made it count. Got to the NFL, he backed up Drew Bledsoe. Drew Bledsoe, Washington State product of Mike Price, got hurt. Tom Brady came in, 7 Super Bowl rings, and he's been to the Super Bowl 10 times. I think he's been to 14 conference championship games. 13 of those were in his 20-year run with one of my favorite coaches, Bill Belichick of the New England Patriots. He was there 20 years. And the guy, he takes care of himself, but he wants to be great. He wakes up every day. Look, if you got to yell and scream at people to push them to be great, after a while, you just say, forget it. If they don't want it, you can't care more than they care, Rodney.
That's right.
Just how it works.
No question about that.
Hey, Rodney, real quick, I know I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know you got to do another show. I'm looking at the time, being conscious of time, as Gordon Ford always tells me. But how do people follow you on Tider Insider? And we're looking forward to having you back on again this coming week.
All right, Rob. Yeah, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You get instant access with a credit card, or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check. Gives you all our premium information, as well as our all sports forum, where there's a constant flow of exchange there among the community there that we have of Alabama fans.
Well, and it's the forums, like you say, are fantastic again. And Alabama fans all over the country, all over the world, Tider Insider, the source for Crimson Tide sports. And Rodney, if anything breaks, we'll be on till 5. And then again, tomorrow morning, 8 to 10 a.m. on Sports 56 WHBQ, and Sunday 3 to 5. Always text in, and if you want to call in, be part of the round table on Sunday. We'd love to have you. And I know we didn't talk about basketball today, but hey, we got all weekend to do that.
Let me do this real quick, Rob.
Yeah, go. Yeah, tell us. Give us that update real quick.
Alabama picked up a commitment for the 2022 class today from tight end Elijah Brown from Dayton, Ohio, a 4-star player. So just so your Alabama fans out there know, the Tide is once again rolling in recruiting.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a nationwide grab too. I mean, there are years now Alabama might sign 3 or 4 in-state kids, 6 out of Georgia, 5 from Texas.
Yeah,
but they don't really recruit. They're choosing, and that's where you want your program to be. And Rodney, look, again, people will be going to your website tonight, checking on that. And for $48 a year, you get 365 days, 24/7 coverage from the best group of people covering the Crimson Tide. Thanks so much for being with us, Rodney Orr.
Appreciate it, Rob. Take care.
You bet. You too. Be careful. Hey, Billy Roberts is on the phone with us over in Atlanta. Let's see. Atlanta's so big, Billy, you can't be hip and call it the 404 or the 678 or the 770. It's 22 counties, 6 million people and counting. And man, welcome to Sidelines. And we're going to be getting a call here in just a minute, Billy, from Justin Wynn, one of our sponsors, Red River Ford Toyota, and over in Wynn, Arkansas. And I'm going to tell you what, Billy, I am calling from Ice Station Zebra here at the Cherry Farm in Park in Arkansas, frozen tundra. Just the highway out here is a solid sheet of ice. You go more than
Good night. Yeah, we I think it's coming our way over here in Atlanta. We're anticipating the kind of not a nice weekend, but for right now, it's nothing happening yet here.
Yeah.
But,
hey, listen, one of the guys just came by and told me we're expecting a bunch of snow up here Monday. I have not been watching the news. I've been working and watching reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies. And look, man, and it's just hey, look, there's nothing else good on TV except for sports. Of course, I watch a lot of sports. But Billy, fun time on the podcast this past Tuesday with Gary Stokan, the CEO and the president of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta. I thought that was great stuff. And you're there in Atlanta. Talk real quick about what we said about the College Football Hall of Fame. And I know we threw a lot out there the other day about how to make it better, how to make the College Football Hall of Fame a bucket list destination for college football fans. And they are all over the country, and Atlanta's as easy to get to as any place. But I just think it's, again, like Gary said, it was in South Bend, Indiana, getting maybe 60,000 people a year. Wasn't even an exhibit up there about Bear Bryant. I'm sure not much about the SEC at all. I'm sure there was a lot about Newt Rockne and all. But the College Hall is not a regional museum. It is a national museum that celebrates and reinforces all that makes college football great, isn't it?
Well, absolutely true. And, when they lobbied to bring the hall to Atlanta, one of the things that they made a point of doing was raising all of the money to erect the building so that there would be no debt service on it when the museum opened up. That's the challenge with a museum, is they've got no money to change and freshen the exhibits and the content up because they've got a big debt service to pay down typically. So the guys that knew what they were doing, that got the hall moved to Atlanta, Gary among them, I think they had all of the money, $20-30 million or whatever it was, committed before they started to build that building. And they delayed for a year or two, to kind of make that happen in that way. And so you've got a beautiful, relatively new building. And they presumably got money to freshen it and keep it interesting, because so somebody like me, I've taken, out of town guests there. I've probably been 4 or 5 times to the hall, and it does change, and there is new stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean it's a constant, Billy. It's a constantly evolving museum. Let pause for a minute here. We're gonna have Justin Wynn, General Manager, Red River Ford Toyota over in Wynn, Arkansas, on with us. And hey, Justin, thanks for joining us. And I know yesterday y'all did not open till noon, and hopefully it's business as usual today. But let's talk about in the first hour today your Ford trucks. And I can tell you, I'm driving an F-150. I drove over to Wynn for dinner last night, and roads here in Parkin was ice. 64's got some patches, but kept it in the safe zone. Got that 4-wheel drive on there. I felt safe, comfortable. We made it back, and I'm gonna tell you what. If you're looking for a truck, you've got them. But let's focus on these Fords first, and whatever you got going on.
Well, I tell you, just like you said, it is 4-wheel drive truck weather right now.
Yeah.
And if you think it's going to let up anytime soon, you haven't looked at the forecast. So, I would suggest getting out here and getting you one. If something more to happen, you want to be able to lock that dude in 4-wheel drive and pull out of those ditches. But I'm glad you kept it between them, buddy.
Yeah.
And I've got, I tell you, I've had 2 truckloads come in from the factory this morning. So I've got plenty of trucks out here for you to look at. And of course, the new 2021 Ford, complete redesign. New interior, a couple new engine options, really great trucks, and I've got them.
You mentioned last week, and I've got Billy Roberts on with us, my roommate from college. He's one of our contributors on Sidelines over in Atlanta. And Billy, yeah, if you are interested in a Ford or a Toyota, this is the guy I was telling you about, Justin Wynn. And they deliver, but I'll get you to come over here, save him the trip, and you can come visit us here in Memphis.
Well, I'll tell you, a friend of mine here in Atlanta just bought a brand new Platinum F-150 and was showing it off to me this week, and I was pretty envious. That's an incredible truck. He had a white one with a huge sunroof in it, and 22-inch wheels. It looked fantastic. So yeah, that's definitely the one I would get.
They're beautiful, Billy. You talk about that sunroof, and for a long time sunroofs and truck were taboo, but now Ford's really set that up and made it basically the whole roof. I mean, it's huge.
It is, absolutely, and it really lightens up that interior, and it's a nice place to be, and it's got a huge back seat. I rode in the back seat on purpose because I wanted to check out the legroom, and it was phenomenal. That whole vehicle is amazing.
Well, you get over here, and Justin will get you fixed up with one, because they're great. And I know, Justin, you talked about the trade-ins now are at the highest you've seen in 20 years.
They are. And I keep talking about that because it's big news. Typically, you don't see values on pre-owned vehicles go up. As you drive them, as they age, the values go down. But they have gone up over this last 12, 13 months because of the supply of the new vehicles. However, just like I said, I had 2 truckloads full of new Fords pull in today, meaning the manufacturers are firing back up. They're not producing PPP stuff, and they're working on building cars again. And as we get new cars coming in, your trading value is going to come back in line. So if you've been thinking about trading, you need to jump on it.
All right. What about somebody is like Billy or whoever? They're out of town listening. We got a lot of those people. I get a lot of questions. I'm getting more and more of them the more you're on. They're saying, well, I said, get online, go to redriverfordtoyota.com. You can get most of the process completed before you even walk in there. It's an easy way to buy a vehicle, isn't it?
It is. It's super easy. You can come on, look at my inventory, see if I have something that you like and that you want to see. You can give me your trade-in information. You can give me all your buyer information. It's a secure website, so you don't have to worry about having your information stolen from it. We make sure that it's extremely secure and that you're well taken care of. And we can do the whole process online if you like, where I actually bring the vehicle to you and you never even step a foot on the dealership lot. Or you can complete the whole process online and then just show up here for 5 to 10 minutes, pick up your vehicle, and be gone. We'll try everything we can to make it extremely easy and pleasurable. And if you don't know what you're looking for, just come by. I mean, if you're close, just stop in. Look, you might drive a Mustang, you might drive an F-150, you might take home a Highlander from that point. Who knows? But once you get in these new vehicles and start touching and feeling and pushing buttons, have that new car smell hit you, you'll find something you like, and we'll make you a great deal on it.
Yeah, and y'all will go out and find it. If you don't have it, you will find it. Hey, join us again the next hour about 4:30 if you can, Justin. We'll talk more about the Toyotas. But hey, Red River Ford Toyota, Wynn, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. It's an easy trip. It's worth it, even if you have to walk. And Justin, Wynn, thanks so much. We'll talk to you in an hour.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. Hey, Billy Roberts, and it is true. It's really easy to go over there. And I'm telling you, right now, where we are in Parkin, Arkansas, I'm expecting to see polar bears outside. It is so cold. We got water running outside everywhere possible because that's the worst thing. I can think of worse things, not having sports. But anyway, you better be getting ready because I don't know if the freezing rain you're getting. And now, if the snow they're talking about, comes here, it's going to be a significant event. But snow's, I guess, easier. And that's a relative term, driving around in 4-wheel drive, which is it is easier. Ice, of course, you just take it slow and easy on the brakes. Don't slam the brakes on. That's
we need to run around and get some airplane de-icing fluid and start selling that to people with satellite dishes so they don't miss their sports on TV when they're iced. That's a good business.
That's a great one. I remember, and satellite dishes you don't see them like you used to. They're smaller and all, but you're right. I imagine all the grocery stores are having quite a run right now. Billy, let's take a look. We had Rodney Orr of Tider Insider on with us there in the first block of the show, talking about Alabama, the process recruiting. Of course, with Rodney and like all of our guests, they may cover their particular school, which he covers Alabama, but we quickly will transition over into the SEC, college football, recruiting, pro football, and all. And this past week, we talked about the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay 31, Kansas City 9. And I threw some numbers out there, and I'll throw them to you again. 1 5-star on the two rosters combined. And that was, of course, Leonard Fournette, St. Augustine High School in New Orleans, played at LSU, and was cut after this past season. And nobody wanted to trade for him or anything off the 1-15 Jacksonville Jaguars team. And he was a great story of rising from the ashes. Lazarus, Phoenix, goes over to Tampa Bay. Gronkowski comes out of retirement. The Gronk romps. Or the Gronk ronks. I could put that on a bumper sticker. The Gronk ronked in the Super Bowl. He comes back. And there were other players that came back, but they wanted to be with Tom Brady. Bruce Arians, the coach, he's one of the more deserving people. He has worked his tail off to get this. I think he's the oldest coach to ever win a Super Bowl. More power to him. Age is just a number. It's how you think. It's what you feel like. 1 5-star, 20 combined 4-stars on the rosters combined of Kansas City and Tampa Bay, 22 3-stars combined, and 41 others. Those are obviously 2 stars or below. And we all know of those players that came out of nowhere and go on. But again, player development is so critical. We talked, Georgia, Kirby's had 25 5-star kids he signed since he took over December of 2015 at Georgia. 4th most talent-rich state in America, state of Georgia. And not one of them has earned the title of consensus All-American. They've had first-round draft picks, but not as many as you'd think. But since 2008, Alabama's had 41 of their players earn the title consensus All-American. Billy, there are a lot of schools that don't have 8 or 10 in their entire history. Going back, some schools have been playing football like Rutgers 6, Princeton 4, November 6th, 1869, 150 years ago, 151 years ago, and 152 now. I bet Rutgers doesn't have 8 consensus All-Americans. And the job of developing 97 players drafted, 33 of them in the first round. Every year there's turnover on that Alabama staff, Billy, but they're developing players. Then you look at
that's exactly right. So the thing is interesting, being an Auburn guy, looking at it from outside, I'm like, every time we get 5 stars, it seems like they're either a bust, they're like a guy from a single A school in the middle of Florida that hasn't really played.
Byron Cowart comes to mind.
Yeah, from Sefner, Florida, inflated 5-star that probably wasn't really a 5-star, or the Auburn coaches couldn't get the best out of a guy like that who had all the measurables and all of the things on paper to look good, but he lacked intangibles. But the Alabama process that we used to, kind of roll our eyes at, boy, it's real. You plug in coordinators every year when they leave, and Nick Saban has built a renewable forest over there. He's just growing sequoias, out of the ground, and they cut a few down, new ones grow and take their place. It's just crazy how he's done it. But, we can all hope to get there. But what you're saying about the Super Bowl rosters, only having a single 5-star, I mean, that gives hope to people that are not Alabama fans, that if you could find the right coach and if he can mold these guys and develop them once they get on campus, you don't need to have 5 stars. And if you don't have a certain type of program pedigree, it's difficult to get them anyway. You need to go find 3 and 4 stars with a little chip on their shoulder that have been overlooked by somebody and develop them. And that, Clemson is an example of that. I've said on many of your shows, if Clemson can do it, Auburn can do it, or fill in the blank with other schools, because, Clemson exists in that little valley between state schools. The Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama are all surrounding them. And just like with Auburn, Clemson's a similar school where they're not the state school in their own state. So they have to cherry pick. They got to get a couple guys out of Atlanta, a couple kids out of Florida, a couple kids out of North Carolina, and build their roster that way. And, Auburn has to do that too. There's only a certain number of schools like an LSU or an Alabama that the kids grow up just wanting to go there, and you have to turn away the kids that you aren't interested in. There's not that many programs like that. Georgia comes to mind, but Tennessee doesn't have enough D1 talent in the state probably. So, Tennessee, when they were at their best, they had to come in and take kids out of Georgia and other places too. And they'll get back to that, but that's what's going on right now.
Well, let me say this before we take a commercial break. You go back and listen to what Gary Stokan brought up on our podcast Tuesday night, Sidelines.live. Nick Saban told him, Gary, if I can finish first in Alabama recruiting in the state and second in Georgia to Georgia, I'll be playing for national championships. Well, that is what's happening. And look, you've got to develop the talent. Stat Tiger, who has long time been part of Inside the Auburn Tigers, Stuart Carter, he's right. You look at the staff, the Gus Malzahn 8-year run at Auburn, they were developing 35 to 40%, maybe 41% average of the players that they recruited. I mean, if they signed 25, they might have 9 or 10 of them that were what they call a significant contributor. That's unacceptable. And when you're paying a head coach $7 million and a staff what they were paying them, again, unacceptable. You look at the job where coaches are developing players, and out of, let's say, 3,400 kids that sign Division I scholarships in a given year, maybe 34 of them are rated 5-star. That's it. That's 1%. Around 350 are going to come in at 4-star. So the other roughly 3,000 and change are 3-star, 2-star, but that's where the bulk of your team is going to be, is 3s and some 4s with the occasional 5s. In this most recent recruiting class, you look at the top classes: Oregon, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, and Georgia. Those 5 schools, I believe, signed 21 5-stars. That leaves 13 for the rest of the country. Okay. But that doesn't mean the rest of the country is not going to have good football. And you say, well, it's the same 7 or 8 teams right now every year that are playing in the playoffs. Well, whatever it is, do something about it. Go get
Well,
better
absolutely. And here's
players.
the thing, too. Here's another thing. I mean, eventually a kid is going to have playing time. And when you get saturation of 5 stars at Ohio State or in Alabama, even the best players are going to have to be told, your time's going to come a year and a half from now. You're going to have to just wait your turn. And some guys will do that and have that 1 year of glory and if national championship ring, if that's important to them. And I'm sure it is. But other guys that want to play right now will go to schools where they can offer playing time. So that's where the hope thing comes back in for people like me. They're like, my school's on the outside looking in right now, yet we've got a rich tradition and all the facilities you could want. But what we can offer right now is playing time. And so that's where the transfer portal comes in. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's the reality right now. So I noticed the trend of this recent February signing day of, the coaches are holding back 5 or 6 or 8 scholarships and not filling the full 25 that they're entitled to because they want to see what the transfer portal looks like.
Yeah.
Coming out of spring practice,
Billy,
guess. So,
hold that thought that you're onto something, and I'm going to tell you what I think, and that is you better watch yourself because if you hold out a bunch of scholarships, it's like duck hunting. Let's wait for the mallards to come in. You don't want to shoot the shovelers or the gadwalls or whatever coming in. What if the mallards don't show up? I mean, my deal is first in, first killed. Okay. Hey, let's take quick commercial breaks. Sidelines.live with you till 5 p.m. Central. That means east of the Chattahoochee. 6 p.m. I know my dad's listening right now going, boy, everybody knows it's Eastern time. But anyway, we'll be with you with Billy Roberts in Atlanta. And at 4 o'clock, we will be joined by Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU Tiger over in Atlanta. And Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, talking about new football coach Josh Heupel. Be right back. Okay, Billy, I'll be right back with you. I got to go grab a beer.
Okay.
Oh.
Get me one.
Oh. Put a piece of this red oak in here. My MJ said, yeah, Brandon, take all that in. That's the stuff that stuff burn all my.
Ate through that Ziploc bag and ate into those graham crackers and some of those candy bars. So I'm setting a trap. I threw them away and then I dug them out and I put them in the microwave. So I put ours in the refrigerator. And I'm gonna set a trap for the bugs that they got into. Back 388-0852.
Let me see what the back is like. The view is.
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Here. You're not there, so.
You don't have any.
You
Can't
know,
see the turkey.
well, I can use it.
Put that. I want that to be shown. Okay.
Well, Robert, the people want to look at you.
Yeah, but I want the background of the duck thing.
I can't. I can't control all that. Well, please don't mess with it. It's not what you think. It only shows a limited.
Billy, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, hold on. How much longer, Odie?
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. All right. All right. Man, it is so cold up here, Billy. You walk outside, everything's just frozen.
I don't even want to hear it.
I went out to run this morning and had it on my Arctic gear. And it was like really cold. Here we go. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you. Friday afternoon edition, www.sidelines.live. And hey, we're having a great conversation. Billy Roberts over in Atlanta talking about player development, recruiting. Again, there's a limited number, maybe 1% max in any given year of the 3,400 kids or 3,500 that'll sign Division I scholarships with 130 Division I schools are rated 5-star. Again, about 350 of them are 4 stars, and the other roughly 3,000 and change are 3 stars or 2 stars or not even rated. Okay. You've got to be able to develop players. But let's not be silly. There's money to be made by the recruiting services, Billy. Rivals.com, Scout, ESPN, 24/7, whatever. They're going to ramp up recruits to programs. I mean, hey, Alabama has, but Alabama backs it up. But on a 180, Texas fans spend more money than about anybody in the country subscribing to these recruiting services. And they've had 11 straight years with 4 losses or more. Texas has not recovered from the 2009 national championship game defeat against Alabama. And by the way, that game was 27-24 with 5 minutes and 43 seconds to go in the game. Alabama had a 3-point lead, and Alabama scored a couple of touchdowns late. Of course, we know Colt McCoy went out early in that game. They just haven't recovered. Hey, Texas, you had to get rid of old Mac Brown. The 16-year run he had wasn't good enough. Just wasn't good enough. And look what you've had. Now, let's see who the latest coach is. Steve Sarkisian. Look, what he's done at Alabama, they broke every record you can break. I don't want to hear the excuses about the virus and, well, we had limited practice. Shut up. Put your lip over your head if you're talking like that and swallow. Do us all a favor. I don't want to hear it. Okay? You got to develop players. You got to have a bunch of alpha males, a dominant alpha male culture at your football program. And you got to get those kids tough, because tough people make it. They will fight through anything. You get a bunch of snowflake cupcakes, they're not going to survive. They're going to look for excuses and make it okay to lose, okay? You have to do the opposite. You got to find excuses to win. But, Billy, you were on fire before we took those commercial breaks. Come back with us. Billy Roberts over in Atlanta.
Yeah, we were talking about, this roster management thing that's kind of kicked into the college level, similar to the way the NFL does it, where, you're holding out, seeing who might emerge that you could grab. It's a free agency come to college is the only way to describe it. And, Nick Saban was on this a long time ago and took a little heat for it, when he was doing it a while back. But now, Dabo and these other coaches that kind of gave him a little stick a couple of years ago, they're now joining the trend, and they're doing the same thing. They're going to hold 5 or 6 of their scholarships that are allotted to them, and seeing what they can find out there, that might float by. They may need a linebacker, they may need a running back depth, and they'll have a scholarship to offer, which is an interesting trend, because it used to be that you oversigned. If you remember when you and I were back in school, they had 25 scholarship limit, but they would oversign 28 guys, knowing that a couple of them may not qualify academically, or something might happen to somebody on the current roster who's not going to be retained. And so, if we needed to be reminded it's a business, it certainly is, even though it's amateur athletics at the college level.
Well, and Billy, you just touched on something. When was the last time you heard about a particular recruit at any school not qualified academically? Remember Prop 48 in the late 80s? You don't hear that anymore. Okay.
No.
And everybody qualifies now. In fact, right now, I think everybody's getting a 36 on their ACT because they want them to be happy. Look, that's what's been going on the last year. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, kids are graduating without even doing the work. Well, we just want you to graduate, want you to feel good about yourself. That ain't how the world works. You're going to get punched right in the face when you get out there, start competing against people like me, people like you. Well, I'm just saying that's the reality. My wife is over here saying that doesn't make people feel good about themselves. Well, no. But what the point is, that's not how it works. And with recruiting, when you get to a school And you look at a guy like Byron Coward, who came out of Seffner, Florida, Armwood High School, 2A football. He wanted to go to Florida with C.C. Jefferson, big defensive lineman down there in Florida. And you had the big offensive lineman. They all signed with Florida, but Cowart came to Auburn with his friend, Will Muschamp. He loved Will Muschamp, who was recruiting him at Florida, but Cowart never made it at Auburn. He couldn't handle not being the big dog. I mean, there was a lot of guys that were 5 stars on that defensive line. Carl Lawson out of Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. You had Montravius Adams, as he used to say, Montravius Adams, Vienna, Georgia, Dooley County High School. He was a good old country boy, tough as nails, great kid, 5-star. And but here's what's crazy, that Montravius Adams and Carl Lawson were 2 of the top 10 players in the country, not just linemen, not just players in the state of Georgia, but in the country. Number 1 that year was a kid from Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia, Robert Kimdichie, whose brother Denzel Kimdichie was already at Ole Miss. He went to Ole Miss. You've got to learn that when you get out there in the world, the real world, whatever you want to call it, you better be ready to fight. And if you hadn't been brought up by parents that push you and make you work and make you have accountability, and teachers and coaches and friends and priests or whatever, you're going to struggle. And so great stuff. Billy, hang on here with us. We've got Frank Duffy. Go Tigers, Mr. LSU Tiger from over actually in Atlanta/Jasper, Georgia. Frank Duffy and Rhonda Duffy, Duffy Realty over there in Atlanta. If you're looking for a home, that's the ones to call. That's who I'm calling if I ever move over to the 678, the 770, the 404, and whatever other area code they want to put in there. But Frank, we're talking about player development. Billy Roberts and I on this Friday afternoon edition of Sidelines got another hour to go, and how important it is to get the players. And Billy made a good point. He used Louisiana as an example. Good God, every kid in that state dreams of wearing the purple and gold, whether you're, from New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, they all want to play down there. And they got a guy that grew up from Bayou Lafourche that went to, I think, Northwest or, and then, but he went to LSU, but he ended up at Northwest. Coach Ed Orgeron, he gets to really choose when it comes to recruiting. You would think it's an easy job, but it's really not. But the biggest school that he's got to deal with is Alabama. Look at all the talent that they've been bringing in from the state, but still LSU, again, 5th rated recruiting class in the most recent class that finished February 3rd, but really was over in December 16th or 17th in the early period anyway. But as well as I do, if you can't develop the talent, you're going to struggle. And by the way, we did give the proper due recognition to the only 5-star football player on either team who was on the field in the Super Bowl this past Sunday, and that's your boy Leonard Fournette out of St. Aug in New Orleans. And hey, remember, he was giving up for dead, wasn't he?
What a heck of a game. I mean, I tell you what, Jacksonville's loss was Tampa Bay's game, and it really was a perfect fit for them. And the way he carried the rock, they put away Kansas City like the Falcons should have put away New England back when they played by running the ball in the 3rd quarter. That's when they put them away. Yeah, I mean, that was the kill shot. And Leonard looked great. In fact, I really thought there was an outside shot. He might have even got the MVP as well. But
I did too.
You had 6 LSU Tigers in that game, and I'm telling you, I even tweeted out one time. I said, I don't think I went more than 2 minutes without Jim Nantz calling an LSU guy's name. That's how prominent they were. Tyrann Mathieu, Fournette, Edwards-Hilaire, Minter, White. Even Williams, the other running back for Kansas City. I mean, they played great ball out there. And talking about, developing players. You're right. Louisiana has some great talent. But, man, it's all about, NFL, LSU. That's the logo that they put out where the 2 words run together. And all these kids, all these great, incredible, prospects, they're looking. Yeah, they want to play on Saturday. They want to play between the crossbars and those upright, posts at LSU. But they also want to go on to Sundays as well. And that's what you're seeing coming to fruition. And it's amazing having 6 guys on that field for the Super Bowl from one college.
Yeah, and let me say something real quick. I got a text from my dad who listens to these shows, guys, and he critiques everything. I make sure I did say Byron Cowart, not Yan Cowart. Yan Cowart was a walk-on when Billy and I were at Auburn, who's an architect, very successful. Philip Cowart's brother from Selma, who started on the offensive line for 3 years at Auburn down there when I was in school, 82 through 85. But I want to say this too. Ed White from up around Shreveport, he likes to get on the levee and ride his horse every day. Saw a great picture on Twitter of Ed White on his horse at Tiger Stadium and Ed White on his horse at Raymond James Stadium, and 6 players, you're right, from LSU. Guys, here's some cool numbers. On the field Sunday in the Super Bowl, you had 24 players from SEC schools. Next closest, the Big Ten with 19. After that, the ACC with 10. Okay. In the last 15 national championships, you have had an SEC school, I believe, involved in 13 of the last 14 of the last 15 national championships. You've had, I believe it's 10 or 11 SEC champions. Then of course, Clemson's won it twice. Ohio State won it once. And the rest of those in Florida State in 2013. So it's 11 of the last 15. The other ones are Clemson has won 2, Florida State 1, and Clemson 2, Florida State 1, and Ohio State 1. And the SEC has won 11 of the last 15. Absolutely incredible. And Billy Roberts, he mentioned about the Falcons. And I think there's still grief counseling classes for Falcons fans from that meltdown a few years ago. Because, like I said, I grew up a Cowboys fan, but I always loved the Falcons too because they're the Deep South's only real team for a long time. And you think about and I'm going to throw this to Billy and then back to you, Frank. Y'all both are in Atlanta. What would it be like for the city of Atlanta if they were to win a Super Bowl? What would the fans feel like? Would it bring just tremendous pride? I would think it would make people really as cocky as Foghorn Leghorn, the Rhode Island Red Rooster. Like, how we doing there, son? How about them birds?
Well, I'll tell you, we've had a couple of near misses, and a lot like when Atlanta was awarded the Olympics, the excitement about it, when it finally got here, felt a little weird. It was kind of anticlimactic. I mean, the week or two of the Olympics, was a little strange because there have been 6 years of buildup and hype, and I can't imagine that it would be much different if the Falcons were to win the Super Bowl. There's been so much angst and wringing of hands over, their near misses, and how, they shoulda, coulda, woulda. But when it actually does happen one day, I'm sure it's going to, it'll be a little anticlimactic because the hype has been built up too much, and there's no way the reality can match the anticipation. I think it's going to be deflating in a weird way.
Yeah, and clearly there would be that moment of disbelief where they probably would have to pinch themselves if they actually won it. Of course, and I being an LSU guy, I live in Atlanta, but I'm a huge Saints fan.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that day never comes that we have to figure that out.
Right.
Hey, Frank, I got to say this. When I was when the Saints won the Super Bowl, we had a bunch of Louisiana guys in the office on the floor. And I mean, 2 weeks later, they're still celebrating. They're still coming in with circles under their eyes. I mean, that city and Jimmy Ott really got after us in a fun way, talking about Archie and Drew Brees. And he said, no comparison. Drew Brees, the greatest. And they're both beloved. And the Saints fans, if you think, I guess the takeaway is, because we're all the same age, go back from your childhood days when the Saints weren't any good. Archie was out there getting his brains beat in, but the Saints, they would pack the Superdome. They love the and I'm going to tell you, when you go to New Orleans, I mean, that city, it's the greatest food city in the world. bar none. I mean,
Well,
it's the city that lives on the slogan. If it swims, flies, crawls, or runs, we'll put it on your plate.
Put it in the pot.
That's right.
Hey, let me tell you something. I remember I was a kid. I grew up in uptown New Orleans. I was within earshot of the crowd's roar when Tom Dempsey kicked the 63-yard field goal to beat the Detroit Lions in 1970. I can still remember hearing that roar from my house. I mean, and you got to remember, Tulane Stadium was that, where the first,
Yeah.
the three of the first Super Bowls in New Orleans were played, was an old Tulane Stadium. In fact, my first Super Bowl that I ever went to was Dallas and the Dolphins in '72.
Wow.
And I can still remember it. But this was a 101,000 seat stadium. Almost had that look of the big house in Ann Arbor, and it was plopped down right in the middle of uptown New Orleans, right in the neighborhood, right near Tulane University. And I can still remember those days. You talk about the crowds of the Saints fans in the Superdome. It was equally as loud out there. And there's just something about outdoor football on a Sunday afternoon with, that sun's coming in. And, New Orleans had good enough weather where it wasn't going to be that cold. I really thought it was a shame that they actually went to the Dome in '75. In fact, I was a Tulane ball boy those years, 73 through 76. And I remember leaving Tulane Stadium. The last game we played was against the Ole Miss Rebels when I was at Tulane, in Tulane Stadium. And then the very next year, we opened up the Superdome against the Cincinnati Bearcats. And I'm telling you, it went from a raucous on-campus situation to it was like being in a mausoleum. It was so big. It was so cavernous. And, maybe Tulane drew 25, 30,000 fans. I mean, it was just cavernous in there. So, but no, I remember being a Saints fan, never thinking Archie would ever come off the pedestal. But Drew definitely did that. Just like Alabama fans would have never thought Bear Bryant would have ever come off the pedestal. And, they got Saban up there now. Of course, he needs a step ladder to get up there, but that's another point. That's my LSU in me coming out.
Hey, let me tell you something funny. You talk about that Dempsey's field goal, 63-yarder. You know who the holder was on that field goal?
Scarpati.
I thought it was Jackie Burkett from Bessemer, Alabama.
No, guy by the name of Scarpati, and it's one of the best trivia questions ever. If you go back and look at it, it's so funny. And I think the guy only appeared in like one or two Saints games, and he's on that infamous kick where you see the half foot coming up through. Because remember, he was a straightaway kicker. And so, his foot came up, and then you see that name, and I'm telling you, it's the most obscure name you'd ever come across.
Well, you know what is really cool is that you've got Archie, you've got Drew Brees. Both of them love New Orleans. Drew Brees,
Yeah,
I mean, Drew Brees he's a kid from South Lake, Texas, down there in Austin. Played at Purdue, and man, Purdue has produced some great quarterbacks. Billy, you go back to Atlanta, the most long tenured quarterback, probably Steve Bartkowski, who played at Cal Berkeley. And Tommy Novus, great linebacker who played at Texas. And Billy White Shoes Johnson. Was Billy White Shoes Johnson from LaGrange, Georgia?
Hogansville, not far away from there. Hogansville's a suburb of LaGrange.
Callaway, yeah. And I was going through there back October the 11th. I remember on that Sunday, we stopped off at the Love's Travel Plaza there. I just thought about Billy White Shoes Johnson. And you think about it, Billy and Frank, Monday Night Football, how much fun that was when this was a man's country. I mean, man, you'd turn on TV Friday night, there'd be a Dean Martin roast, and it'd be Dean Martin be up there with a drink in one hand, a cigarette in the other one, and Foster Brooks up there, going, I just want to say, Don Pickles, you're my favorite, and your wife and I have been having an affair, and I thought I would tell you that you're out of bourbon. This was a man's country back then. I mean, you turn on TV and Don Meredith and Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford. I mean, they'd all be up there messed up as lab rats by the fourth quarter. And it was so much fun. Everybody wasn't all worried about offending people and stuff. It was a great time.
You couldn't wait. I mean, I remember it would come on at 8 o'clock Central Time in New Orleans. And I mean, at 7:30, we used to have, I don't know if you remember Buddy Delaberto.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You know, he would come on from the press box, and he would give out, whoever the Saints player that week was, it was, we got a winner for Lauren Jean Whitnow, official New Orleans Saints wristwatch. And he had that list, right? And he would give the winner. And you were sitting there, and 5 minutes before Monday Night Football, if you asked your parents if you could stay up, and then you just couldn't wait. Because remember, it would come on and you'd have that iconic music.
Yep.
And then this is Howard.
Oh, God. Oh,
and he would
gosh.
launch into it. And then remember the big thing was, if you stayed up until halftime, if your team, if Billy was a Falcons fan and I was a Saints fan, we hardly ever made the highlights because we're always getting our brains beat out. But if that one weekend, if we played well on Sunday and made those halftime highlights, that
God.
was you had made it, right?
Hey, let me tell you something I remember and I still listen to, I'm an AM radio junkie. My dad got me hooked on the White's radio log, Billy and Frank. And everybody listening, if you remember, it was the listing of all the radio stations around the country. Well, I learned about Clear Channel Radio. And I listened to AM 870 WWL New Orleans, Hap Glotty, King Edward Cigar. Time is 7 o'clock coming across the Pontchartrain Causeway. Well, right now we got an oyster truck jackknifed over there. Mr. Gaijan and Mr. Bourgeois are going at it. No, we got a mandatory 10 count here. And then during the hurricanes, they go, let's check out down there and let's go to Morgan City, Louisiana, and then talk with Hoagie. And you'd always have some guy down there named Augie or Frankie going, well, we're gonna wait down here. We got the shrimping business and we got a lot of steak here. We're gonna try to ride it out down here, and we'll keep a calling in till it's over. But the great thing, Monday Night Football. I mean, I started watching it in 70 or 71 with my dad, and you think about all the great times and just how funny those guys were. Howard Cosell, arguably, guys, one of the great head rugs of all time.
Oh,
I mean,
he remember when Danny Don was pretending like he was going to lift up his hairpiece.
Hey, I love that stuff. Let me say this. Doug Dean listening down there in Alabama at the hunting camp. He said right now, enjoying a good bourbon. And Doug Dean is the AU Daily Dose. And you talked about, the source. You over 19,000 people linked in right there following Auburn. So many people that listen to this show. Thank you so much. And to all of our sponsors, thank you also. Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Frank Duffy in Atlanta / Jasper, Georgia. I want to get into the next topic right now is I did see, though, the ratings for the Super Bowl were the lowest since 2007. And look, we all have our ideas and we pretty much know, but we're a sports radio show. We talk about sports all the time. Like the commercial, like the promo says, hey, talk sporty to me. You know what? The NFL is a great game. Why don't we start getting back to loving football? And you remember, Billy and Frank, do y'all remember as kids, DX trading stamps? There were these gas stations and you'd go there and you'd get these trading stamp books and they were paper and you would get stamps every time you got gas. Because my dad would fill up the truck. He'd fill up the car, station wagon. You'd go an hour later and say, hey, man, don't you need gas? Go buy the DX, because you wanted to get the trading stamps with your favorite players, and you would fill out the whole roster. And you knew every player on every roster. I mean, that's what we need to do, is get back to loving the game for what it is. Say what you want. Shut up and dribble. Go tackle somebody. Throw the baseball. Let's get back to sports. Billy, I'm going to go to you and then back to you, Frank, up in Jasper, Georgia, but living vicariously through his uptown New Orleans roots. I love it.
Rob, I think one of the problems that's happened since we all, became fans as young folks is there's way too much focus on the money that the players make. I was reading about Trevor Bauer signing with the Dodgers, the other day. And, he was saying it's not about the money, but he just signed the biggest contract ever for a baseball player. For the next 3 years, he'll be the highest paid baseball player ever. And the only reason I know that is that's the angle that they chose to cover when they're reporting the news, versus he's the reigning Cy Young Award winner, and he's chosen to only sign a 3-year contract. He's only 30 years old. Not so many years ago, a guy like that would have been signed for 8 years, but now they don't do it that way. But there's been too much emphasis on, the financial part of it and what they make. And, and it takes away from the enjoyment of the guy being an athletic marvel and, getting paid to play a kid's game, no matter what he's getting paid. I wish they would, and they can't do it because it's too interesting to people, but I wish they'd put the genie back in the bottle regarding the financial end of it and let's just focus on the great players. I mean, watching Brady the other day, it was entirely possible to forget that, he's getting paid the kind of money he's getting paid to go to Tampa. But he, what he did on the field at his age was remarkable. And that's the story. And, I wish they would just not even mention his paycheck, but it's not possible.
Yeah. And I've said this for a long time, guys. I wish we'd get away from players and coaches, especially players, being known for the size of their contract and being known more for making a diving tackle or diving into the stands for a loose ball in basketball or climbing the wall in baseball to make a catch. That's what sports is all about. Not all this other crap that we get thrown in our face all the time. And again, you think about New Orleans, a fan base, and the Packers and fan bases that they always show up. And look, let's face it, the NFL fan bases are incredible. I love college football and I love the NFL. I love football. It's a great game. Basketball is a great game. Baseball, there's no better game to go to than baseball. But how much fun is it, Frank, when you go to a Saints game now with Sean Payton as the coach, when the expectations every year are to win the Super Bowl?
Well, and it's funny, I recently reconnected and started getting season tickets, even though I'm still living here in Atlanta, because we've got our apartment in New Orleans.
Yep.
And so I'll answer that by answering how difficult it was this year to go to the one game that I actually got my season tickets for, which was the Saints and the Chiefs. And I was excited that I got, the lottery came up to where that was the game that I was going to be able to go, because we all only got really one game that you go to.
Mm-hmm.
A couple might have gotten two, but most of us only got one. So, to have that game and to be sitting there with only 3,000 people in the stands and just not having that same feeling, I mean, that really put into, comparison when you are there and the place is rocking, how different it is.
Well, New Orleans fans, it's amazing to me. They packed Tiger Stadium, 102,000. They packed the Superdome, which is around 75,000. And they're the same people. And there's no divide like, oh, I just like college or I just like pro. They love them both. That's what makes the Saints games a college type atmosphere. And anybody that's ever been to a Packers game will tell you about just it's a college type atmosphere, 80,000 plus. The team's owned by the fans, and they've all got a piece of it, and they are the most prideful fans that they're public owners. But I keep talking about the Saints. It'd be incredible. And I think once the Falcons win a Super Bowl, that will happen in Atlanta. But Frank, New Orleans, it's the whole, they ought to have what the hell with it. Have the Super Bowl in New Orleans every year.
Well, a lot of back in the old days, I think it was like once every 3 years they would have the Super Bowl there. I mean, it was very top heavy. Of course, now they're doing it because they're, awarding the Super Bowl to places that are building these big mega stadiums. And
yeah.
Stuff. But to your point, what's interesting is, for like a place like Green Bay, they got Wisconsin fans up there, University of Wisconsin fans, but Green Bay is a kind of a place unto itself. And with New Orleans, you are right. You've got LSU and Saints fans that are one again. In fact, it was kind of funny. Rhonda gave me a shirt this year for my birthday. It said, as a T-shirt, it said, "I'm a Tiger on Saturdays and a Saint on Sundays." I mean, you could, it's a perfect, microcosm of what it is being down there. But yeah, the Saints games are very college-like. That they're very fun. They're entertainment, and this year, unlike the years past, you just didn't have that vibe, and it was strange. In fact, I even told her, I said, I'm kind of hoping I don't get any more tickets. It's actually better to watch it on TV compared to what it normally is. The drastic change in what it was like this year compared to the typical. So I'm hoping we get back to normalcy. Look, I want to be in Jordan-Hare or Tiger Stadium or God forbid Bryant Denny when the place is rocking. Even as an away, it's just that feeling of being in there that was really missed so much this year.
Yeah, nothing like it. And no matter what stadium I go to, I always love to hear the radio broadcast, and that makes it so much fun to hear it. And because plus when you're in these big cavernous stadiums, you need it to get your sense of bearings, because there's so much going on, but then you need to hear from the sideline reporter and the people up in the box and everywhere. Of course, now press boxes are being moved over into the corner of a lot of stadiums, and it's terrible. But the money that can be made by those 50-yard line spots being sold for premium seating is too much for universities to turn down. But again,
well, I know at LSU. In fact, Dan Bornay, the public address announcer, he's basically into the end zone for doing the public address announcement.
Yeah,
I mean it's amazing how much that they have put a premium on those suites and on the the billable space, if you will.
Yeah, and I think we ought to be very careful with that. Billy Roberts, you think about, we were talking with Gary Stoken and Frank. We had a podcast, Billy and I were on with Gary Stoken, the CEO and the president of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and talked about what's going on in Atlanta. And with the Peach Bowl, the College Football Hall of Fame, just the overall sports scene. And, we have, again, Sidelines.live Friday afternoon podcast. Hey, I am calling right now with the fireside here in the main den here at the Cherry Farm, surrounded by probably 35 mounts on the wall of flying ducks coming from every direction, deer heads, and a full mount turkey Tom here who has very little to say. But I've got Elvis the elk, Audrey over here producing, drinking some road sodas. But I'm going to tell you what, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the Georgia Dome, I thought was a great arena. It wasn't even 25 years old before they got rid of it.
It's in great shape too.
Yeah. And guys, think about this. The difference, Billy and Frank, between college and the NFL is, in the NFL, everybody's talking about the new stadium we have. In college, this thing's 110 years old. These bricks were put here by the Pharaoh, and talk about, it's the tradition. Again, I always say this. The NFL is more about the name on the back of the jersey. The college is about the logo on the side of the helmet. Everybody, hang on. We're going to bring on one of our sponsors here with us, with Justin Wynn from Red River Ford Toyota over in Wynn, Arkansas. Billy Roberts over in Atlanta. Frank Duffy in Atlanta as well. Frank and Billy, you know what we're talking about, cars and trucks at Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas. And Justin, I know in the first hour we talked a lot about the Ford trucks, cars, and SUVs. Let's talk about those Toyota cars, trucks, and SUVs. And you're driving a great-looking black Toyota Tundra with the 35-inch tires. And again, for all of you out there listening, I'm broadcasting live from Ice Station Zebra at the Cherry Farm in Parkin, Arkansas, in the frozen tundra of eastern Arkansas, where we're expecting some snow here in the next few days. And it's a great time. It's a great time for you to have a car, truck, or SUV. And especially, you're going to need to have you a 4-wheel drive, and it's going to be about the only way to get around, because if you're driving on ice or if you're driving in snow, you don't want to get stuck. And Justin Wynn, you're back on here with us, and sorry about the technical difficulties there, but Red River Ford Toyota, one of the sponsors here on Sidelines. And Justin Wynn, look, it is cold out there. We're expecting snow. We've got ice on the ground right now, but the next week it's going to be Arctic like. I'm broadcasting from Ice Station Zebra in Parkin right now, and I'm not kidding you. I'm waiting for caribou and polar bears to be seen outside the window.
That's right. So you're right here. You know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I tell you, I'm driving in this morning in my Toyota Tundra. You know, you've seen it. It's big. It's got the big 35-inch tires on it. I've got the 4-wheel drive. And I'm telling you, it never missed a beat, Rob. I mean, these Toyotas, these Ford trucks, it's the time of year that you need this stuff. And I've got plenty of them for you to choose from.
Well, right now, I know when people are coming in, they're saying, "Hey, I want to come look at getting a new car, a truck, or I've got a trade in." The trade in values that you're seeing are the best in 20 years, but that's not going to last forever. And in fact, that window is shrinking by the day.
The window is closing daily as my lot fills up with new vehicles, and not just my lot. Every dealership in the world is starting to fill back up with new vehicles post COVID here. And as that happens, your supply and demand changes. And so you don't have such demand for a good pre-owned. But as of right now, we still need them. We need them badly right now because the lots aren't quite full yet with new vehicles, and the values are excellent. I'm talking 20-25% more than they were this time a year ago.
Look, that Toyota 4Runner, the whiteout package. Jake Crane, host of the J-Boy Show, was over there a couple of weeks ago, loves it. And I get a lot of people texting me, emailing me, calling me, and saying, I hear y'all talking about Red River Ford Toyota over in Wynn. Can I come get a car, a truck there, or can they help me? Put the word out to people. Again, we are local here, Memphis, Parkin, Wynn. You know, Wynn's 45 minutes from Memphis. John Dobbs Jr., part of the Red River Auto Group. You know the Dobbs name in the car and truck business in Memphis and the Mid-South. They're synonymous with success and treating people the right way. But we got a lot of listeners on the web. Sidelines.live goes out all over the place. I've got a lot of people in Atlanta going, you know, golly, this sounds like a place I'd like to work with. Tell them how easy that is to do.
So it's super easy. With the internet has come the revolutionary new way to buy cars, just like everything else. You buy everything online now. You order your groceries online, and then 2 hours later, they show up at your door. You order all your toiletries online. 2 hours later, they show up at your door. A car purchase can be the same way, Rob. You can do the whole thing online, and I can bring it to you and drop it in your driveway. It's that simple. You obviously can still do the conventional way. Just come by the lot. I've got lots of great vehicles for you to look at. You can do the whole thing online, then come to the dealership and pick it up, be in and out 5-10 minutes or so. But we just do everything we can to make it as easy as possible.
Look, you're open tonight till 6:30 or so, or until the last sale is done. Tomorrow, open up 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. Service department open until 12 noon. Austin Futrell is up there. I met a friend of his last night that knows him quite well. They go to church together, and lots of activity. Hey, these big winter weather is coming in. I'm telling you, I drive an F-150 myself, and I'm going to tell you what, I think it's like, you know, Red River Ford Toyota, Justin, these cars, trucks, especially when I look at these trucks and SUVs, it's like, how do you want your million in 20s or 50s? Flip a coin. It's a win-win situation. But people want to get the process started online. They can do that. And it doesn't take long once they get in there if they find what they want.
Yeah. And I tell you, really, Rob, it's all about your buying experience. I mean, let's face it. We're a Ford and Toyota dealership. It's not like we're some type of specialty lot. We all pay the same price. Every Ford dealer, every Toyota dealer pays the same price from the factory that we do. But it's really about how we treat our customers, how well we take care of them. And I really think if people gave us an opportunity, they would feel that experience, feel that difference, and be very satisfied with the fact that they gave us an opportunity.
Well, what I love the most of all is that you really do this. I mean, the other night you were 10:30, you got back to Cabot, you had delivered somebody's vehicle. You don't just say that, you deliver. And
me as the GM.
Yeah. As a general manager, you've got a vested stake in there. Listen, what you're doing over there, again, is you're offering people the best possible buying experience. And folks, look, 45 minutes from Memphis, if you're going to Little Rock or Memphis at I-40 at the Forest City exit, go north about 15 minutes. If you're on Highway 64, going back and forth to Heber Springs or to your duck club, of course, duck season's over, but you might be going over there just to hang out. It's about a half mile south of Highway 64 there in Wynn, across from Jordan's Exxon. Red River Ford Toyota. Justin, look forward to hearing from you in the morning in the 8 to 10 a.m. Saturday edition of Sidelines. Thank you so much for being a sponsor, and go Red River.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. Okay, Frank Duffy still on the line with us here right now, and we're going to be adding with us here in just a few moments Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers. And Tennessee, of course, made a coaching change here just recently, bringing in Josh Heupel from University of Central Florida. Of course, we know that he played at Oklahoma, but he was at Central Florida, coming with his AD, Danny White, a rock star AD. Hopefully, this is going to be a huge help for Tennessee football, because since Phil Fulmer left, they've just been wandering in the wilderness. They've had limited success, and it's been a real struggle for Tennessee. That's really a surprise to me.
Hi, this is Bob Kessling.
And, you start thinking about this. But look, let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. Frank Duffy, hang on the line with us. We're going to be back, joined by Bob Kessling, again, the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers. And, of course, John Ward, the Tennessee Vol Network, has a great history. What did he do? He scored touchdown Tennessee. We'll be right back. Hey, you know what I love about him? I mean, he would sit there 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Tennessee. We'll be right back with you. Rob Brown, Frank Duffy, Billy Roberts will be back on with us in a minute, and Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols. This is the Friday edition of Sidelines.live. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Okay, Frank, I'll be right back with you, okay?
No worries, buddy.
Okay.
I'm hanging on.
All right, thanks.
People want what? Can't hear you.
This is what we need, is this red oak. Okay. How much longer, Audie? Okay. Yeah, let me try to call him again. I tried to call Bob and did not answer. Okay, hang on. They're just a friend or something. Okay. Hang on. Dun, dun, dun.
What time is he supposed to be
Okay.
on?
Yeah. Bob is supposed to be on at 4:30, and he said for me to call him. So let me try one more time, Frank. Or we're still on the break. Make sure I'm calling this right number. Yeah, I got it. Okay. what's that, man? And then Billy, I can't get any outgoing calls. Hey, yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm gonna bring you back on with Frank. Okay. Yeah, we're supposed to have Bob Kessling calling in from Tennessee. He told me to call him. And anyway, but Billy, it dropped you. Normally I can have 3 or 4 people on this thing at one time, but it kept dropping you and Justin was calling in. Okay. How long? Okay. We're about 10 seconds away. So Bob Kessling hopefully will be calling back in. Did you do all those commercials? Okay, good. We got everybody's. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Bam, bam, here we go. One second, guys. Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on the Friday afternoon edition of the www.sidelines.live podcast. I'm on the phone with Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, one of our contributors, longtime contributor since we started the show, long time ago, year and a half ago. And Frank Duffy as well, Mr. LSU Tiger over in Atlanta / Jasper, born and raised in uptown New Orleans, Mr. LSU Tigers. And man, we're having a lot of fun. Bob Kessling is going to try to join us. He's got tied down on something. He's going to be trying to call in here, the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers. And we're with you here, Sidelines Friday afternoon podcast, 3 to 5 p.m. Central. And again, we will be back on in the morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, Sports 56 WHBQ, 96.1, and the new FM 98.5. And again, the Sunday afternoon Sidelines wrap-up show, 3 to 5 p.m. Jimmy Hodge hopefully be joining us here again shortly, but we're having a fun time talking with Billy and Frank, covering a lot of stuff. LSU, Auburn, SEC, Georgia, Alabama. Guys, I want to go into something here now. You know, you look around at what happened this past year, and I'll throw this to you first, Frank, and you look at the football leagues. It looks like Oregon's quarterback is going to transfer now. He's going into the transfer portal. Last year, Southern Cal's quarterback, JT Daniels, entered the portal, ended up at Georgia, had a knee injury, and now he's their starter. And Georgia is the prohibitive favorite to win the SEC East in the 21 season. We know Florida is going to be replacing Kyle Trask. Dan Mullen, a great quarterback coach. Now we're going to see what Todd Monken can do at Georgia. But everybody's putting their money behind, betting on Georgia to win the SEC East. I wonder if this Oregon quarterback will be the next Pac-12 quarterback to head to the SEC. Is this the start of a trend? I think it's just, I'm going to tell you what, the Pac-12 needs a commissioner. I know Larry Scott's contract ends June 30th. I don't think it's going to be renewed, but they've got to do something here quickly to keep that conference from collapsing, because right here in Memphis, you've got the Tigers. They're 65-27 since David Rudd became the president of the university 7 years ago. And I look around at that conference top to bottom, Cincinnati, Central Florida, SMU, Temple. I mean, these are programs that were given up for dead a few years ago that are now really good. Now, they don't play the SEC schedule or the Big Ten schedule week in and week out, but they show up when it counts. I think they're passing the Pac-12 by. And, Tulane's right there in New Orleans. I don't know if the academics are so strict at Tulane if they can get there. But, Frank, I'll start with you. I think if you get the right people at any university with a commitment and a commissioner that's a leader that helps, and rising tide floats all boats, but it's getting the right mix of coaches, fan bases, and commissioners. Anything is possible, isn't it?
Well, you said it right there, leadership. I remember you and I and Billy was on the phone, and I think we had 3 or 4 other folks. We were having a round table, and remember I was down in Florida on 30A. It was about a month before the season started, and we kept saying how little the Pac-10 had relevance then because they wasn't making decisions.
Yeah.
Remember, this was right about when the Big Ten started to capitulate. So it was kind of like Batman and Robin. And I'm telling you, the Pac-10 was Robin. Their relevance right now in Division I athletics is woeful. It really is, and I think you have to blame it on the from the top. I think their leadership again was very weak, very wishy-washy. It certainly wasn't the leadership that the SEC took. Because I tell you what, without the SEC, I don't know if we have college football last year.
Yeah, and Mike Orasco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Memphis, Tulane, SMU, Central Florida, South Florida, Cincinnati, Navy, Temple, he came out and said, we're going to play 12 games.
He stepped up quick.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you what, Mike Norvell left Memphis, went to Florida State. Ryan Silverfield, the offensive line coach, became the new head coach. Tigers went 8-3, not much defense, but the expectations, once you start winning, once you start eating at the fine steakhouse, the finest restaurants in town, crystals aren't what they used to be. I mean, they might be at 3:00 in the morning, but and they rightfully so should be. But Billy, let's flip over to you. Atlanta, Jeff Collins, football coach at Georgia Tech. He really is big on this branding. And if I were him, I'd go hire Vince Thompson and the people at Melt Atlanta over there in Buckhead on Piedmont at the Ritz-Carlton to do my branding, because he's trying to do the 678-404-770. Georgia Tech, let me tell you something. They're not getting it done. And Georgia Tech, we know about their great history, okay? That's without a doubt great college football history. But relevance in the last 20 years, why aren't they getting it done at Georgia Tech? They cannot say there's not enough talent. And don't tell me that all the kids in the state are dumb and can't qualify to get in there. I don't think there's a commitment from the top to winning in football or basketball, especially since they got rid of Bobby Crimmins, who, by the way, had one of the great bowl cuts of all time, but was a hell of a coach for 17 years from Brooklyn or the Bronx, whatever. Man, that guy made Tech basketball so relevant. They weren't great. They weren't even elite, but they were relevant.
Well, absolutely. Here's the challenge that they have, as far as my understanding is, a couple of years ago, in the last 20 that you're talking about in particular, they've been really upside down with their finances in the athletic department. And I think that who's the athletic director at Clemson now? He used to be there at Tech, and I think he kind of got tired of having his hands tied financially and left and landed at Clemson at the perfect moment, right when they start winning national championships. I can't think of his name all of a sudden, but nonetheless, that's been their problem. Facilities and a razor thin, budget in their athletic department, and that's the problem they've got. They have a stadium that doesn't hold a lot of people, so it's a nice intimate game day experience, but in ticket sales, which are crucial, they don't have a lot of tickets to sell, and they're not selling out the seats that they do have. So, there's a big source of revenue they're not getting. With the advent of the ACC network, there was a lot of people saying, they'll finally get some cash injection into the athletic department to build some facilities and do some catch up, which is all important for recruiting. So I think that they've got some practical problems there, but they do have a lot to offer. I mean, if you're a kid from Miami, for example, it's a tough sell. And although Auburn has gotten kids to go there, that's a little town. Clemson's a little town. If you're a kid from Miami, that's maybe not an exciting place for you to go to college. But if you're a city kid from Miami and you have a chance to come play in Atlanta, which is a fun town, that might be more appealing. So I think that's part of the branding that they have to do, is to sell Atlanta as a college town, which is a little counterintuitive, if you will, but I think that's what they have to do.
Well, and Rob and Bill, you will remember this. I know you do. Do you remember when Dave Brain, who was the AD at Tech, two before Stansberry, and I think it was Bubalinsky or whatever. But you remember when he came out and said that time, he goes, "We're not expecting to win championships." Do you remember when he came on air and said that? I mean, I was like,
yeah,
I was shocked. I mean, I think it was a cultural thing. And even Paul Johnson, it was kind of funny this week on 680 The Fan, they were talking about it, where somebody did a tweet And Paul Johnson popped off and tweeted back. I didn't know he had a Twitter account. Popped off about how he, had gone first or second, and he's talking about his accolades over the years of basically, mediocrity, but that mediocrity was good enough. He literally came out and said that, and so, I think it's a cultural thing that they're having to overcome right now, and I think it's been that way for a couple of decades.
Yeah, well, and the guy I was thinking of is Dan Radakovich. He's a
Radakovich, not Bobulinski, Radakovich. That's right.
Yeah, and he was a guy that wanted to win, and he didn't have the money, and they have a lot of wealthy alumni. Let's not kid ourselves. They've got a lot of guys that I think they have more millionaire alumni than almost any school other than Harvard. There's a crazy statistic out there about that.
Well, it's engineers.
So, yeah, they've got in architects. They've got a great alumni base of guys that are well-to-do. That if they could get excited about football, those guys would open up their checkbooks. But here's the problem.
They don't. That's the crazy thing. To your point, Bill, their coffers are empty. Do you remember a couple of times they were saying, "Well, we would do this if we had more funds." I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, with your alumni base, they should be flooding money in there.
Absolutely. They've got all of these guys. The vast majority of their, I would gather to say, I'll bet 100% of their alumni, degree carrying alumni, make six figures. There's no way they couldn't, in today's day and age.
Well, everybody wants to talk about engineers and think that they're, boring. They're not. And CPAs are not boring. They just get excited about boring things. That's a joke I heard one time. But I'll tell you something. In the campaign Auburn just did, it was $1 billion campaign they finished a couple of years ago. Of the 13 colleges within the university, the one that gave the most was the College of Engineering with $207 million. Okay. And I got to say this because Maury Gaston, a friend of mine who's a listener of the show and a friend of the show, and he's on here a lot with us, is a mechanical engineer, the head of marketing national for SIPCO, American Steel, a pipe and steel company. Sent me a bit of trivia here, by the way. He said the first touchdown in Auburn Stadium, which is now Jordan-Hare Stadium, was versus Florida. We know in 1939 by Babe McGee, who was a Sigma Nu at Auburn 715 West Magnolia. The first touchdown in Southern football, Auburn versus Georgia, was by Jesse Culver, one of our 5 local founders at Beta Theta Auburn, 715 West Magnolia in 1890. That was 2 years earlier. So interesting. Also want to say hello to Alexander McCall, former commander, just a few years ago, Sigma Nu at 715 West Magnolia. Guys, it is amazing to me when you start talking about what we're saying here with, the Georgia Tech, the money, but you think about what these engineers. Look, the head of Stryker Medical, I think his name is Dan Brown, no E on the end of it, so I'm not related. He gave Auburn a $57 million gift. Stryker Medical, y'all all have heard of that. These guys, these engineers, you've got to engage your alumni. This new football facility for Auburn probably would have been $65 million or so if they had built it 3 or 4 years ago. But things change. Politics have a lot to do with that. But it's going to cost Auburn $92 million. I bet it'll be around $100 million. But when they finish it, we had Dana Marquez, Director of Equipment Operations, on as a guest yesterday on our Thursday podcast. Go back and listen to it. Dana Marquez has been at Auburn since 2005. He's working with his 4th group of coaches. Auburn's going to have the most modern football only facility, whatever you want to call it, in the country, 233,000 square feet. And guys, now we're talking about Georgia Tech, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Frank Duffy, Atlanta, Mr. LSU Tiger. We've got Mr. Mechanical Engineer, go Engineers, Maury Gaston, the pride of Sylacauga, Alabama, and 715 West Magnolia. And as Ida and Mary would often say to me, Brown, you crazy. Maury, welcome to the show. I know you've been listening, and you probably have been working up something that will actually make a positive difference in the world. But hey, was I right about the College of Engineering, the Samuel Ginn College of Engineering at Auburn University? The impact you all have, it's amazing.
You crazy, Brown. You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, you're spot on there. Engineering raised well over $200 million. We surpassed our goal. We're second only to athletics, and that's because they include ticket priorities in their fundraising. You take ticket priorities out, and we're miles ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. It's John Brown, and John and Rosemary Brown gave $57 million because they graduated in 1957. And that was used to build the Brown Copel Student Achievement Center in the College of Engineering. It's like a student union for the College of Engineering. And they built the J. and Susie Gooch Performing Arts Center, which is a world-class campus-based performing arts center. Auburn is absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And, you know, Maury, we're talking about Georgia Tech. Billy Roberts, my roommate from Auburn up in Atlanta. Frank Duffy, friend of mine and Billy's over in Atlanta, who's an LSU grad. You think about Georgia Tech. They have that engineering school. It's the one that Auburn is trying to that basically it's like in a peloton in biking. Get on the back wheel of the fastest rider and do a pull off of them. Georgia Tech versus Auburn. That was a great rivalry. We know about that. I remember the Rec Tech parade, which ended in 1987 when Tech went to the ACC and they stopped playing Auburn. They played a couple of times since then, and Georgia Tech got the upper hand. But talk to me and to our listeners. You know, engineering, again, it's misunderstood, but it's what makes the world move. Why does Georgia Tech struggling? I mean, academic standards, it's hard to get into Auburn. It's hard to get into Georgia Tech, but there are enough guys out there, if they committed, I would think, where they could have their football program at or near the top of the ACC based solely on the amount of talent in the state of Georgia, about 250 Division I players a year.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a cultural thing, and we talk about the Auburn family and all that sort of stuff, and I don't think that that's fluff. I think it's genuine and it's real. And Georgia Tech and Auburn's campus cultures and alumni cultures have gone different directions in the past 25 years. And some of it's related to urbanization in Atlanta. Some of it's related to the demographics of the student bodies and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that's the root of the issue right there. It's more difficult to have a nationally classed collegiate football program with a culture, and I don't mean it disparagingly, that Georgia Tech has than like Auburn.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of folks that are going to get their dander up about that, but I think it's got valid validity to it.
Oh, I absolutely do. Billy, you and Frank are right there in Atlanta. Chime on in here because I know you got something to say.
Well, I'll tell you.
Well,
Go ahead,
you got it, Billy. You got it,
I was
Bill.
just going to say, you know, we've witnessed over here the same kind of thing, a little bit of a drift with the University of Georgia, if you can believe that. And it started with their president, Michael Adams, that they brought in. He had academic pretensions. The same diseases afflicted University of Texas too. And, you know, great schools that they are, you know, they've decided that they needed to downplay the power of the athletics program in order for the academic folks to rise. And I'm reminded of an old quote attributed to Bear Bryant that he may or may not have said it. He was talking to a professor at Alabama that was complaining about all the money and attention that the program got at Alabama. And he says, sure we can talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. My dad must have heard that, because I heard him say one time, all these professors that are raising hell about the stadium expansion, the next time they get 65,000 people to come hear their poem recited, they'll have something they can complain about.
Yeah.
And he also said, athletics is the front porch of your university.
It is.
And that doesn't take anything away from academics, but it's the front porch of your university. And that's one reason Alabama's got 40,000 students right now, 65% of which are from out of state.
Yep.
And when their coach leaves, these kids from Chicago and Dallas and Los Angeles and New York, they're going to quit coming.
Yeah, they are.
Sorry.
And by the way,
I think that's a very good point that you're making there,
who wants
Maury.
to go?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I'll rent the U-Haul. I'll pay for
You
the
got it,
U-Haul.
brother.
yeah. I mean, hey, Jimmy Hodge, you just joined us. I know, we're having a discussion. Jimmy Hodge up in Knoxville. You had to bounce off from earlier in the show. We've got Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU Tiger in Atlanta, Billy Roberts over in Atlanta, Maury Gaston from down in Birmingham, born and raised though in Silicaga. Became a true knight at 715 West Magnolia. You crazy, Brown. But anyway, hey, Jimmy Hodge, we're talking about why Georgia Tech can't really get it together, because we talk about great engineering program, probably 25% of the students at Auburn are in engineering. Georgia Tech, it's a much higher ratio than that. And Jimmy, you've traveled, one of the 4 people that rebranded Adidas sportswear and marketing from all over the country. What's the problem at Georgia Tech? I mean, how can you not be successful when you're so close to the Varsity Inn, where you can get those greasy gut bombs with shrapnel, bowls of mud, and boxes of fuses at all hours of the day? I'm talking hamburgers, chili dogs, and cheese fries. Jimmy, are you there? Oh, we may have lost him. But anyway, that's what I don't understand is that, you look around and Jimmy, are you there? Yeah. Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. But talk about the Georgia Tech factor. We just don't understand. And I brought that point up. And Maury, you just sent a good point. It looks like the United Nations over there with all those big buildings. And when they built the Olympic facilities back in '96, you thought, oh my God, that's going to be a great benefit for Georgia Tech, but they just don't seem to be able to get it going.
Well, I think one of the obstacles Jeff Collins is facing is that he inherited a group of players that were recruited to run a totally different system under Paul Johnson. And, you've got to have at least a couple of full recruiting classes to play your system. And I thought Collins was a really good selection, because he's been around a lot of outstanding coaches, and he did a really good job at Temple. And Temple is not an easy place to win. And I just think he needs literally at least one more full recruiting class to get his kind of guys in there. And of course, at Tech, in a lot of cases, the entrance requirements are just a little bit different, so you can't get absolutely everybody. And it's just a really difficult situation, I know, for the fan base, because under Johnson they had some really good years, and then they had some lean years.
Yeah.
So and I think by the time that Paul decided to he's still retired as far as I know, he was just worn down, I believe. And it's again, it's one of those situations where you just have to keep grinding. And a lot of people don't realize that when Frank Beamer took the Virginia Tech job, 6 years in, it was like they were still just trying to get out of quicksand. But the administration stayed with them, and before you know it, they just kept plugging away, and they started having success. Now I realize now it's a different ball game, because with the money that the head coaches are making nowadays, there is tremendous pressure to win. But it kind of is what it is. And I think the ACC is kind of in a situation right now. You've got Clemson, of course. UNC has made a lot of strides under Matt Brown, and then everybody else is kind of in a similar situation. In other words, you can just throw a bunch of tickets in a raffle box, and everybody else has a chance to beat everybody else when you're talking about those remaining teams on any Saturday. So I really think they do have a shot to get competitive if they can just have some young players that are able to adjust to the college game and all the different intangibles that come along with playing against athletes that are just as good as you are, and certainly were better than almost everybody you played against in high school. So you just have to do a great job of evaluation, getting players that can fit into your culture, and get guys that you can develop. I mean, it sounds pretty simple, but really in a lot of ways it is. You just have to grind away.
Well, look at the big cities. It's hard to have a big time football program in a big city unless you get the right people. Remember when Pitt was a powerhouse football program in college football? They stopped playing Penn State. That didn't help. You need to be in those big time matchups that keeps your name out there in front of people. Okay. Yeah, everybody can get on a website and follow you, but you want to be in the middle. You better be in the big fights. Okay. You want to be well known. You got to be. Yeah.
That's a lot of what I was referring to culturally with some of these schools. I mean, Cincinnati's got a lot of potential, but are they really going to be able to get into the top tier of collegiate athletics? Same thing Georgia Tech's experienced, and then you got these Philadelphia schools. You know, you remember when the big city schools up east were powerhouses, and now they're not, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, think about the Big East in basketball. When they had that thing rolling, man, that league was incredible. Georgetown, when John Thompson was there, they were rolling. You think about it. Georgetown is a private Jesuit Catholic university in D.C., in Georgetown. Very exclusive, really hard academically. Their basketball program has never come close to being what it was under Big John Thompson, who, by the way, died recently. One of the absolute best basketball analysts I've ever heard. I still remember, with 19 seconds left, my youngest son, Max, and I were driving through Shelby Forest. I couldn't take watching the Auburn and Virginia game in the Final Four. And we pulled over with 19 seconds left because I was too nervous to drive. And when that ball bounced off, and John Thompson made the comment, which I'll always love him for, you don't make that call in the game on this big a stage. So thank you, John Thompson. But it is hard. And Frank, you know, from growing up in New Orleans, look at Tulane. At one time they had a stadium that held over 86,000 people. Now they play.
The Super Bowl was in it.
Yeah.
Super Bowl was in Tulane Stadium.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, he was talking about 3 of the first 4 were there, and look what's happened there. You've got to have a commitment of people there. Look, academics, look, the Auburn Creed is right. Athletics makes men strong, studies make men wise, and character makes men great. And that matters, man. And your honor is dearer than your life. Those things matter, okay? And you know what? Those things, if you don't get the right people involved, I mean, Billy, you know this, Frank, you know it, Maury, Jimmy, the right people make the difference. The 11 years prior to Nick Saban coming to Alabama, Alabama had 8 years where they lost 5 games or more. Yeah. He comes in there, first year, they have to win the Poulan Weed Eater Chainsaw Massacre Bowl, whatever they called it, to go 7-6, okay? But that next year, he went 12 and 0 the regular season, but they lost that game to Florida, and then they lost the bowl game. To hell with that, okay? They didn't care. They didn't want to be there, but they should have showed up, but they didn't. But the next year, they were national champions, and they curb stomped WWE style. It looked like, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin out there, 34-13. And I love Tim Tebow, but he was over there, I mean, crying like a baby on the sidelines. He didn't like losing either. But you better get the right people involved at your university. And you're right. You're not going to. Pat Sullivan said one time, I think it was November 6th, 1983, the day before Auburn played Maryland. They had Boomer Esiason. Bobby Ross was the head coach. He said, tomorrow, 75,000 people, at the time it only held 75,000 people, will be at Jordan-Hare Stadium to see us play Maryland. At the time, he was the color analyst on the Auburn Network with the late Jim Fife. Touchdown, Auburn! Anyway, he goes, listen, he said, I know people talk about football and academics, he said, but which ones, you know, look, we know you got to get your education, but he said, you're winning in football. And if it's Auburn or wherever it is, when people are on campus, they're in a much better mood and much more likely to take out their checkbook and write you a check to support you than when things are bad and you're losing and everybody's talking in negative diatribes. And you know that, Jimmy. And Jimmy, you've been all over the country. I mean, you've seen it, facilities and upgrades and investments, and you know what the Pac-12 schools do and what the SEC schools do. And we know Texas has over 14 billion in their endowment, and all you got to do to see that number go up is look at the price of oil, because you know Texas is tied to oil and you know natural resources. Texas has all the money in the world. They have the facilities that are incredible, but they don't have the commitment. You've got elitist pinheads running that school, and look what's happened to their football program. Again, I say this for the third time on this broadcast today. 11 straight years of 4 losses or more. Absolutely disgusting and inexcusable. Jimmy, you there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like in a courtroom. Defend it.
He was on a roll.
Forget it. The Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's really hard to explain. I think when you, I guess, have some mediocre years, certainly by Texas standard, you're in a mood to, you know, try to change things. And when I think what really hurt them was when Mac Brown, when they made a move on Mac,
Yep.
and I mean, things had gotten stale there. There's no question about it. And with DeLoss Dodds retiring as athletic director, that served as the combination for change. And they went after, you know, 2 or 3 different guys, didn't get them, and finally decided on Charlie Strong. It just wasn't a fit. And when you see that's not going to work, now you've almost lost 6 years because you made a mistake and go in regard to the fact you're going nowhere during that 3 years Charlie was there. You know, they didn't beat anybody of any significance. And then the new guy that you bring in, you know, he's got ground to make up, because we all know that when it comes to recruiting Power 5 level players at these different high schools, it's at least a 2 or 3 year process, developing relationships type of thing. So I think it put Herman in a much more difficult situation than people expected. And, you know, they just weren't able to make up any ground on Oklahoma. And that really gets things going with the Texas boosters when you're not winning like you hope you are. And to add, you know, just to add fuel to the fire when it's Oklahoma that's winning 7 consecutive Big 12 championships, that just makes the situation worse.
Yeah, and look, we've gone a little bit over Sidelines Extra today on the Friday afternoon podcast, but Billy Roberts in Atlanta, Frank Duffy in Atlanta, Mr. LSU Tiger, Maury Gaston in Birmingham. Any closing thoughts? I mean, I think what we're saying is you've got to have the right commitment. You've got to have, obviously, the finances to do it. And there's a lot of money out there, and you sometimes wonder, where's it coming from? But the passion is there, but you've got to fill and get the right fits at the schools. And Billy, I'll go with you first, and then Frank, and then Maury, and Jimmy, you made the closing comment there, and then back to me, and we'll wrap it up. But Billy, your closing thoughts here quickly, because we're just a few minutes to go.
Well, I mean, you know, as a guy that's paying out-of-state tuition for a kid to go to Auburn, you know, I just cringed when they paid that big buyout to Malzahn the other day. But then I go, well, it wasn't actually the school paying the buyout, thank God. But you know, but it says it's a commitment to winning. You know, that a 4-loss season over and over again is not acceptable at a place like Auburn. And you know, I think that nothing emphasizes that by breaking out the checkbook and then committing to building the new football facility. Well, like you said, it'll probably be hovering around $100 million, you know, when it's finally built. That's the kind of statement that players look for, that other coaches look for. I mean, I don't know whether they pulled
off the greatest coaching hire of all time with Harsin, but he looks like he could be an impressive guy that with an upgrade in the money and facilities and what he's used to working with, he could move mountains potentially. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. But all the general theme of today is, demonstrate your commitment to winning. Don't just talk about it. And I think that's what you've been hammering on all day. And Auburn has done that. LSU has done that. Clemson has certainly done that. And they're, look at the success they've been on lately. So that's you either pay the price to compete in the big leagues or you don't.
Hey,
it's a choice that you have to make.
Yeah, put out or get out.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Bill is spot on. And let me tell you something. We are all in an arms race right now. It's called recruiting. And if you don't have the facilities to wow that next 5-star kid, let me tell you, he's going to go somewhere else. If you don't have the slip and slide or the big crimson wave or you don't have the giant endless gumbo pot, let me tell you something. They're gonna find somebody else. And in this climate that we find ourselves in right now, it's like you said, it's the Jimmies and the Joes more than the X's and O's, and you got to get these kids to come in, and they're looking for that extra wow factor. And I'm telling you, it comes by putting money into these programs. I'll never forget this as long as I live. Nick Saban, the very first time I ever heard him speak, he had not coached a down for LSU. It was 2000, and he came to Atlanta, one of the few times a coach has ever come to Atlanta, speak to us at the LSU alumni, and he goes, "Who wants to win?" Everybody puts their hands up. He goes, "Great. Get a crowbar and put it in your wallet because we need money. Our facilities are wrecked." And from the very first time he said that, it totally changed everything. LSU's trajectory in these last 20 years has been because of Nick Saban.
Look, let me just back that up. When it comes to facilities, there's a couple of ways you can look at it. I was watching an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies this week. I think it was episode number 2, and they had just moved to the mansion there in Beverly Hills. And Jethro and Uncle Jed were perplexed by this. "Well, Mr. Drysdale, we've been wondering what this big pile of glass hanging from the ceiling is. Mr. Clampett, let me tell you about that chandelier. It was made over 200 years ago and hung in the Palace of Versailles in France. King Louis, Napoleon planned campaigns under there. Disraeli." And he went on and on and on. And he goes, "Mr. Drysdale, we just plain old simple country folks. We don't mind it being secondhand." Okay, let me just say this. In the SEC, when it comes to facilities, you can say your facilities aren't that good or whatever. It's kind of like, and Maury, you can relate to this. It's like saying you've got the oldest Rolls Royce at Bushwood or at the Mountain Brook Country Club or the Birmingham Country Club. They're still pretty damn good, aren't they? Maury Gaston, I'm going to put you on the spot. The pride of Sylacauga, Alabama, and Birmingham, member of the Birmingham Quarterback Club, friend of this show, a regent with Sigma Nu, one of the finest people you'll ever meet, a product of 715 West Magnolia, a starched khakis, and a starched button down, and always a plan. People don't plan to fail, but they fail to plan unless they went to engineering or accounting school.
I'll say it again. You crazy, Brown.
You crazy.
But a lot of what we talked about today it has its roots in some of my earlier concerns when we were discussing the coaching change at Auburn.
Yeah.
You better get it right. Because if you don't get it right, you may spend 10 or 6 or 15 or 12 years in the wilderness, like some of these schools we've talked about.
Tennessee comes to mind.
Yeah, I think we got it right.
Yeah.
And I hope we did. And for listeners who don't know me, we means Auburn. And I wasn't a fan of churning coaches, but I understand all the reasons why we did it. And the money was privately donated. It didn't come out of operating funds. So I'm okay with that. And I hope we got it right.
Yeah.
And he's got my total support and enthusiasm, and I'm behind him 100%.
And let me say this too, Maury, and to anybody listening, Jimmy Hodge and I were fortunate. We did a podcast yesterday at 12 noon. We put it up on the Sidelines.live website last night. Thanks to Nigel Price, our brilliant webmaster, a product of Hereford, England, with Dana Marquez, Director of Equipment Operations for Auburn. Came to Auburn back in 2005 from the 49ers. Had some really good insight about what Coach Brian Harsin is like. Maury, I suggest anyone wants to know about Auburn or just period, what's going on to get ready for spring practice around the country and for the fall 21 football season. Great stuff. Hey, Jimmy Hodge, I know you were in and out today with us. Thanks so much for being on the show. Maury Gaston, Billy Roberts, Frank Duffy. We had Rodney Orr there in the first hour. I know Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, was supposed to join us, and hope it wasn't a time mix-up, Central versus Eastern. My dad always makes sure boy, everybody knows that time, but hey, you never know. But anyway, we'll be back on with you tomorrow morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, Sports 56 WHBQ. All these shows, Sidelines.live, and in the Sunday afternoon wrap-up show on the 3 to 5 p.m. Sidelines.live. But listen, thanks to all of our sponsors, to all of our listeners, and I will just say this. Don't quit because you're tired. Quit because you're done. Remember, studies make men strong, wise. Athletics make men strong. Character makes men great. That stuff matters. Hey, we're out of here. We'll see you tomorrow.
Rob, you're filling out my calendar, man.